Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Because Football podcast. I am your host, Andrew Bagley. Appreciate you being here and appreciate you taking some time to listen to our guest, Carlos D. Mojica. Carlos is a bilingual communications and football media operations veteran. He's been at all different levels of the game. We're very excited to chat about his experience with NPSL, with the Columbus Crew. He's been involved in a lot of great events and international tournaments as a press officer with CONCACAF, Argentina tours. So many great things we're going to get into here. But interesting thing, and the first time we've had on our Because Football podcast, Carlos is also writing a children's book about this game that we love. So we're going to talk about what led him to do that, how it's been different from some of his other stuff in the game. So first, Carlos, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
For sure, man. It's a pleasure. Es un gran placer. Thank you for being here. And
Gracias.
let's start, man, to get to know you, that footy genesis, the origins, the beginnings of this love and passion for the game. Tell us.
I'm going to give you two memories, and I'm going to give you two because the first one I think might be a fake memory. You know, you always hear about how we tend to remember things that maybe actually never happened at all. But I have a memory of me playing soccer with my dad. Or rather, he was playing soccer with his friends, just a pickup game back in El Salvador, where I'm from. And I remember being there, maybe 3 years old. Don't know if it actually happened or not. It's a very vivid image I have in my mind. And then the other one is the man that got me into soccer was Ronaldo Luis Nazario de Lima. And just, I remember watching that, R9, indeed, watching that Cup Winners' Cup when he was with Barcelona back in the mid-90s and just being mesmerized by him dribbling through people.
That first one, the memory of watching your dad play in El Salvador, not being sure if that's myth or reality or a dream or a hallucination or something. Beautiful, man. It's the first time I think we've had somebody plays it. There's something really mystical about that. And I think it definitely lines up with the game. There's so much there. It's a beautiful image you paint for us. You were with the NPSL, right? And there's always been this thread of communications and sharing the stories of leagues through the NPSL and then the Crew. What kind of were key pieces of those parts of the journey, right? Of those stages. What did a lot of your day-to-day look like? And what do you think you got from that in terms of understanding the role of soccer, whether it's a league or club level, and connecting with people?
So when I joined the NPSL, and I actually first joined AFC Cleveland, there was an NPSL team. At the time, I was a beat writer for a magazine called Centro Deportivo. It was bilingual. And after 2 years of doing that, I learned that I wanted to join a team. I just wanted to feel like I was contributing towards something. And I couldn't find many teams at the time. I lived in Kent, Ohio, and the closest soccer teams to me were the Crew and the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, about 2 hours each way. So really, I just actually reached out to the owner of the NPSL, of AFC Cleveland when I discovered the website. It was near me. It was less than an hour away. I looked at the website and realized that there wasn't a lot that was being done in Spanish, that the recaps could have been a little bit more robust. And it was really just cold calling and saying, hey, I'm Carlos Mojica. I've had the chance to cover men's national team, the Crew, 10 international tournaments. I'd be happy to help you with your club. And because it was the NPSL and the budget's a little bit more modest, as you might imagine, it was the understanding was that I would get to sort of run communications and do what I wanted to some degree, try things, which allowed me to try and fail, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, after a year of doing that, I was asked to join the NPSL with the role of media coordinator. And
Wow.
Actually was a paid position, so.
Awesome. Yeah, but that was like your foot in the door, right? And just that owner just gave you a chance. Really cool. I think for a lot of people listening, could be at different stages in their journey within the game and their careers, but there's something in there of you just like taking what you loved about the game and like giving it a shot, just reaching out. I find that so much, I've been doing that through our podcast or a video, like the amount of people, and I think it's something special about soccer and everybody kind of recognizes like a shared love for it. It's the amount of people that will give you a shot, especially if you want to help them tell their story, right? Especially if you want to be a part of like them getting their message out or getting more visibility. If anybody listening is like, oh, maybe I'd want to do a podcast or maybe I'd want to start writing for a team, like just do it, man. Just start, because I think we don't have enough storytellers still in the United States, and there's always opportunities to share what's going on. So that's kind of really what's hitting me from your experience there.
No, I completely agree with you. When I first started, it was really just weekends. I would be doing some work from home during the week, updating the website, but it was really just going to matches on the weekends at home. Some of the away ones, we would travel by bus. This is semi-professional. These are people that are playing soccer, football because they love the sport. And so we were playing sometimes at high school games or high school stadiums. Some were nicer than others. The press box was mostly empty. Sometimes it was only the PA person from the other team and maybe me. But it was fun. It was really nice to be part of that, not day to day, but weekend to weekend cadence that was happening. And then when I joined the NPSL at the end of 2015, ahead of the 2016 season, I actually requested if I could stay with AFC Cleveland because I wanted to keep learning that club side.
I'm curious too, before we even get to the crew, because you even mentioned it with AFC Cleveland, like you're offering the Spanish language cover as well, right? And PSL. And I think that one of the things I love most about soccer culture in the United States is that it's the most diverse soccer culture in the world in terms of like, there's so many different subcultures, fan groups, people who are all about their MLS team or people who are just Premier League purists or teams who are, Mexican heritage following their Liga MX. Maybe you've got a team in El Salvador that you keep an eye on the results. Like, I'm curious what it was like then to try to connect that local team to the Latin community in your area, because typically I think in every community I've played in, I love playing in the different Latino leagues, Guatemalan leagues all around Philadelphia, right? And every ethnicity in the country has some kind of team or a league or something that they are a part of. But then with AFC Cleveland, with NPSL, you're talking about even though it's amateur, it's more of like a mainstream, right? It's like a little bit more of a mainstream type of soccer community. So what did you take on a cultural level? You obviously had the linguistic skills, but what did you take on a cultural level then say hey, this is maybe how I describe or explain what this club is to the local Latin community that might be more into their Liga MX or a South American team or just Barca or Madrid? How did you bridge that divide?
So really, it was a lot of reaching out to people. Soccer is a game that brings people together. It's something that, I can see if someone's wearing a soccer jersey and I look at them, I can ask them about it. And usually there's a smile because they're happy to recognize it and it sparks a conversation. So to your point, sometimes in communities where they're not as interested or maybe they're unaware of some of these clubs, it was a matter of presenting myself, mentioning who we are, what we do, and just really reaching out. I connected with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in Cleveland. I started attending this event that they would have. I don't remember if it was every weekend or every other weekend. It was called La Placita, and essentially it was
cool,
like a market with food, and I would have a table set up with AFC Cleveland gear and the calendars and things like that. I was inviting folks, and it was educating them as to what this league was, what it could be. It wasn't the professional level, but it was affordable entertainment. And the one thing that AFC Cleveland did so well was that, and I think a lot of NPSL teams are really good about this, they're very invested in their communities, and so they make the players accessible to the children that attend the matches and to anyone. And that was appealing for some families, a lot of families.
Yeah, I've heard it described pretty much all the levels below MLS to an extent. It's almost like community is the business model, right? And I don't know what the spreadsheets look like, the AFC Cleveland, but community is certainly the story and then the marketing angle as well, in the accessibility and people feeling a part of something, which is really exciting. But you had your time at MLS too, right? How did that shift then go into the crew, communications manager? What did that look like? Because I think a lot of people don't understand maybe that communications role within a professional soccer franchise.
So part of it is I was going from working part-time for the NPSL and then on matches for AFC Cleveland to now this was my everyday. And there was a big jump, as you might imagine. I was in charge of the match notes ahead of the matches, putting those together in the off season. I would attend training sessions and assist with the media attending, kind of connect them, see what media requests they had, who they wanted to speak with. Quite often I was translating for players that maybe had a limited English or were still improving their language. Sometimes it was pitching stories to the local media outlets. And then on match day, of course, we had to take care of the media as it pertained to checking them in, ensuring they had parking, making sure that, like the food's ready for them when they attend, the press conference room is ready to go post-match, grabbing players. So it's every day looked a little bit different, but those were some of the things that were consistent throughout the week. And occasionally you have special events or community events, and so that changes your day a little bit. Maybe you have a clinic that the players are doing with some local elementary or with a community center, and so you were always on the go. It was exciting. You really enjoyed my time with the crew.
What is the identity and place of the crew in the Columbus area, right? Obviously, it's Ohio State football. That's got to be number one, right? We know that. But then, you're talking about dealing with press, with reporters. Was that a hard sell to get press to come out to cover games, or because the crew has been around for decades now, is it kind of really a part of the community? Because a conversation we have a lot on this podcast too is how can clubs, honestly at all levels, create a better relationship with storytellers, whether that be official press, whether that be content creators? Is it something worth covering? Do people care about it?
As far as the role of the crew within Columbus, I would say that it's certainly continued to grow over the years. Ohio State may still be number one, but the contingent that's the crew supporters, they are a strong and loyal fan base. I think they're among the best in MLS, and I would put them up there with some of the best in the world, frankly. And I know I'm a little biased because I live in Columbus, but I think that contingent's there. And as it pertains to the media, it is always a challenge, not just because of the different sports and whether or not one's more popular than the other, but you're looking at schedules. And so being mindful of when things are happening, the timing of the events plays a role. And I think being open to different types of stories that maybe, I think most people sometimes tend to think of the traditional sports stories, but are there any off the pitch stories that might be appealing, maybe not to a sports reporter, but to a lifestyle reporter, and pursuing those? And I think over time we definitely got better at that with the crew. I think they are doing an amazing job right now. I don't work with them anymore, but they have really tapped into the local community as it pertains to working with influencers and doing cross collaborations. I know last year they had the R.L. Stein jersey that they did because the Goosebumps jersey with R.L. Stein.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. That was awesome.
I thought that was brilliant because as a kid from the 90s, when I moved to the U.S.,
100%, Carlos.
When I moved to the U.S., I was just a little too old to read those, but I remember that everywhere, and I thought it was so brilliant. So kudos to them. I thought they did a great job, and I think that's a good model to follow. That they're tapping into something that's authentic to the area and exploring it and taking chances.
Yeah. How does that look? Not in the club sense, right? But you've been a part of Leagues Cup, MLS All-Star games, working with CONCACAF on matches. You're part of this like Tres Estrellas tour, right? This Argentina tour through the U.S. And so you're like in these games. I imagine a lot of times these like shorter series and one-off events can be very chaotic, right? Because it's like with the crew, you have seasons or a full season with your team. You figure it out. You develop a rapport. Everyone kind of knows basically what to expect week to week. But with these like international windows and, the Leagues Cup being a very new competition, they're still figuring things out. What's that feeling like on game day when you're juggling reporters, press requests, all those things, the match day staff? Like how would you describe that?
If you're a masochist like me, it's exciting. No, it's a lot. So I think first and foremost, organization plays a key role, and that can be hard to do because, to your point, you're coming into an area sometimes, it's a stadium that you don't know, working with people that maybe you've met before over the years, but a lot of them are new, or maybe you know them in passing and now you're working with them. I explained this to someone last year, and I was saying that it feels like you're like the secret ops team that gets dropped off in this zone, and you have to come together and work on things because I may be working in communications and tending to the media. I have to check with the venue manager. I have to be checking with the people in charge of the signage even. I have to be checking in with the people that run the catering, talk to the groundskeepers to know what we're allowed to do, where we're allowed to be on the field. And so it's a lot of things, and it's actually a lot of meetings that leading into even the date of arrival to the location, to the market, because you want to have all those things maybe not set in stone yet, but in a really good place so that when you get there, you're really just executing. So it's a lot of planning. And I think just like with anything else, when you examine what it takes for some of these events, when you examine anything, there's a lot of intricacy to it. And this is certainly the case here. So it's a lot of communication, stakeholders, and making sure everyone's on the same page. And it's also, you get this market, or excuse me, this crash course on the market and the stadium, the people that actually work at those stadiums. So recently I was at Dignity Health Sports Park, and so the LA Galaxy staff was super, super helpful when it came to showing where things were at and identifying any things that might be pain points that ended up not being pain points, but just knowing that something could happen helps you prevent it, right?
So you had your time with the crew, right? You've still been helping in different capacity with different leagues on the press officer side, but now you've pivoted a little bit, doing similar things of helping to connect people, tell stories, but doing it for Parks and Rec department, right? Local government and things. But I know it's been a part of now, not only that has shifted, but tell us about moving into becoming an author and why a children's book in particular. When you look at all your passion and love for the game, how did this idea come about? What's this journey been like of writing this book?
So I was approached by the Quarter Group, and they pitched this idea to me. And at first, I probably had the same reaction as you. It's like, oh man, like kids' children's book. But the truth is, the more that I thought about it, the more that it made sense. When you're thinking about children, when you think about soccer, you think about joy. And when you think about joy, you think about children. And I remember being a kid, and back when print newspapers were more common, cutting out the photos of soccer players and putting them up in my wall, or reading them, or carrying something with me. And so it became this idea of putting together a book that could be welcoming to kids that are just starting to learn about the sport, some interest, but also something that could serve as a Bible of sorts for a kid to be carrying around. And they just want to read, the idea is that they want to read it over and over again. I kept thinking, what would I have wanted when I was like 8, 9 years old? So.
And then what did you kind of gear this towards? Like what kind of ages and things, because I know it's a lot of player profiles and like major moments and milestones in soccer history. I think the two questions I have in my mind are related. It's like, how did you choose which age, right, did you want to talk to? And then I think part of that is probably then like, well, then what types of moments, players, things, and how are you describing that to the, your target audience?
So really, I worked a lot with the Quarter Group to see what felt like the best fit for the age group. We thought that maybe not too young, but this group felt right. It's early readers. And then on the one side, because I'm someone that came to this country and did not speak English, on the back of my mind, I had it, how great would it be if I'm a newcomer to this country and I'm maybe in middle school, but I see this book that's about soccer that has language that's simpler because it is written for about ages 8 to 10. And I'm attracted to that because I see the players. So now I'm starting to read and hopefully can teach me English. So that was in the back of my head.
Yeah.
That's what appealed to me about it. As far as choosing the players, so that was difficult. I mean, because you only have so much room to work with, and eventually you have to leave some players out. It does have men and women players, which I thought was important. So it was actually really fun to sit down and take the time to include these players and talk about their stories. Sometimes it was more difficult for some than others, only because there's so much that they've done in their career that you don't want to leave anything out. But as with any editing, you got to cut it down. It's also for children, so you have to simplify it. Yeah,
and you want to pick some of the kind of highlights and the key moments. So my next question is related to a physical book, right? So there is going to be a Kindle version. There's a hardcover. You just got it, right? Show us that copy just came in.
So this is the book.
Cool.
There we go. It's
awesome.
better.
Yep. And so great. Goal awesome soccer stories and fun facts for kids. There's all this talk now of, attention spans are dropping, and it's all about the iPad and TikTok and social media and all these things, even for 8 to 10-year-olds, because they're very much digital natives, right, at this stage. Where is it then still like the magic of a book, of one thing that come together instead of just, could a kid Google some of this information or finding it? Where do you think some of that like magic and the benefit is of still putting it all together in a book, especially obviously the hardcover, you can hold it, feel more connected. Because it's like, I don't know that books will ever go away, but we're in this weird place with like the technology and the way that we consume information. So I'm curious how that kind of came out, and did that some of your writing and decisions and editing when you're putting everything together?
Also, that's a valid question. And as we know, landscape's shifting. Goal first and foremost was to make something that children would like, that I would have liked, that I would find interesting, that they would find interesting. And I think though the medium may change, at its core, if what's inside it is appealing to a kid, whether they get this on Kindle, whether they have the hardcover book, they're going to want to read it. And I also think there is something magical about having a book that's yours. And in my head, I just had this idea of like a kid just carrying this with them everywhere they went, because I, as a kid, used to do that with some other books. I remember other kids, they had their books about baseball with all these stats, and they would read them. And you can pull those up online. But we all know when you're driving, you hit dead zones with no coverage. So that's where this also comes in handy.
Emergency preparedness for the overstretched parent, right? Yeah, for the frenzied and frazzled parent. Yeah, awesome. And what were some of the pieces that you thought like, hey, this is what kids need to know? Not only the specific players' moments, but what went into that conversation of like, we can say that so and so player scored a hat trick. Is this kid going to know what a hat trick is? We can say that, especially the global nature of the game, even the names, like to me, I remember getting into the game and like similar age, 10, 11, 12, and some of these names of places and players and teams in and of themselves are a little bit tough to penetrate, right? But that's the beautiful thing now that I love, that the game is so global. So what went into that brainstorming and like, hey, here's what we need. We're going to make it interesting, but this is how we got to help like educate and create the context for the kids to really get the most out of it.
So I always like to say that as a kid, I learned geography by watching soccer, because you get all these different clubs and they typically have the city in them. And so, where does Bayern Munich play? Oh, they're from Munich. Where does AC Milan play? They're from Milan. Barcelona, Real Madrid, right? So the way that I approached it was, how can I make something that's simple for someone that's new, that's teaching them about the game? Someone may not know what a hat trick is. And so we have these little sections in the book where we talk about these magical words that they may not have heard, and explaining what those are. We talk about the different confederations around the world. And when I approach the list of players in the book, I like to say it's not a comprehensive list, and it's not necessarily a list of the greatest players of all time, because one, that's obviously subject to debate, but it does have some of the greatest players around the world. And it was important to me that every confederation was represented, and that people know what a confederation is. You might have heard of FIFA. You may have heard of UEFA, but do you know what AFCON is, or CONCACAF if you're from somewhere else? And so, and that's the way we approached it. And then the other part that we wanted to make sure we touched on was what some of these players have done off the field. So players like Pelé, who was an ambassador to the game in many, many ways. Megan Rapinoe, on what she has done for women's soccer. And so the idea is that when you finish this book, you feel like you've gotten your education about soccer. Mm-hmm. But then you can go back and reread it, because it probably has some of your favorite players, or maybe you've discovered some new ones that you never knew about, but now you're really curious about them. And because now we have the internet, we don't have to wait until ESPN Classic does a rerun of the 1962 World Cup. You can just look it up. Exactly.
Yeah, I love doing that too. What comes to mind is the Inverted Pyramid, right? Jonathan Wilson. When I was reading that, it's the history of tactics. It's a seminal book in the game. but I would love like going then to YouTube and trying to actually watch some of the clips and understand, right? So it's the same thing of, yeah, you read about somebody and it catches your imagination some way, then you can go access it, right? But again, you're given that entry point and you're given some of the key things to know about the person and the context rather than just the game itself. On this podcast, we love talking about stories, the culture of soccer, why we love it, but we do that in a business context, right? We do it in a context of how do we do things well in terms of business side of things that we can create, grow, but also sustain things. So that comes into often money, right? Money is a big, important energy. And strategies of how we're marketing the book and things like that. What was the education like for you of, hey, it was your first time not only writing the book, obviously you have your publishers, right, who are supporting, but what was it like to come into this whole new type of, business really? And what have you learned about that? And what could you kind of share with us or audience if people are thinking of writing a book themselves?
It is a big time commitment. I think that goes without saying. And I think that if you're going to do it, like make sure you're putting in the work, you're doing the research and everything. It's also caused me to look into different things that I hadn't thought about. When I started writing this book, I didn't have any children. We're now expecting our first son.
Congratulations.
Potentially here by the time this airs.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. By the time it's out, and we'll clarify that. But yeah, by the time it's out, you'll have your son will be here and we'll have the copy of the book in his hands too. And yeah, absolutely. Amazing.
But so it made me look into some of those parent groups, parent websites, what's appealing to them, what makes them want to purchase a book, what are some of the local community hubstones that I can maybe tap into. It made me think more about it as say, okay, why would I buy this for my kid if I saw this? Like, what about this would make me want to buy this? It really kind of put me in a parent mindset in a way.
What were some of those specific things that you did learn that you thought, hey, this is what I need to bring out or emulate? Because when you go on to, for example, Amazon, right, the book is available for sale on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And, we've got a link in the description, everyone. So make sure you check it out. There's a lot of different ways you can get it. But when you go on there, there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of options, right? And so it can sometimes be challenging just to maybe stand out and then for the customer to choose. But what were some of those specifics that parents are looking for that you heard from people when you were doing your, market research that also doubled as parent research for yourself, right?
So I think it's making it accessible. And, we talk about soccer and how accessibility is important, but a book should be accessible too. So with this book, I think the graphic design team has done an excellent job putting together illustrations that are appealing, working in factoids that catch your eye as you're reading, but still maintaining enough that if you are someone that's well-versed in soccer, you're going to be learning something. You're going to be interested in this and keep wanting to come back to it.
Yeah, I'm hearing then there's like that art piece, that how it looks, because that's a big piece. Even for me, often when I'm looking through, it's what's the cover look like and how is it? And looking here at the previews as well, like the way that the different pages are set up with, you have your main, obviously your photos, you have your main information about the player or a moment, but then the glossary, like you mentioned, these little boxes that kind of give some more context and information to things as well. What's your hope with this book? What's your hope that you have of kind of like the impact that it's going to have on some kind of kid reading it?
I hope that somebody who knows nothing about the sport picks it up, and by the time that they're done reading the book, they fall in love with it. And I also hope that someone that already loves the sport reads it and keeps coming back to it again and again and again. As far as specific is, I hope that my kid likes it when he's able to read, because otherwise that's going to be my harshest critic.
Right. Of course. So. Yeah. Wonderful. No, it's amazing. Carlos, I really respect how you had the courage to kind of do something very new, right? The courage to do something that was somewhat similar. You've always been thinking about and working in figuring out stories and information, how to shape them for people and how to facilitate those stories. In writing this and this whole process, what's the biggest takeaway you had, the biggest thing you learned, or how it might have changed you in some way?
It made me really, really good at editing. I think. In communications, we constantly have to edit. But because this was for children, it made me approach it in a way that I never had to approach it before. How do I make this interesting? There's that anecdote of Marcelo Bielsa where he was sitting there just silent thinking, and someone asked him, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm trying to figure out how to get my player to understand in 5 minutes a concept that takes about an hour to explain." And it felt like that for a lot of it because you had to condense all this stuff and make it engaging and appealing and use language that kids would like. It's different language than I was used to using, but I think it definitely made me a stronger writer.
Yeah, that's part of the challenge, right? Is that it was such a different audience, and you had to really change. It was still skills you had and had developed your calling on, but reinventing yourself almost in a way, right? Really, really,
Yes.
really cool, man. Kudos to you. Again, we're not
Thank you.
finished, everybody, but again, make sure you go check it out. The book is releasing March 24th, so by the time you're listening to us, we are right around the time where Goal, Awesome Soccer Stories and Fun Facts for Kids by Carlos D. Mojica, that's out. Again, we've got links in the description. So if it's before that, you guys can pre-order, or afterwards you can go and pick up a copy, give it to the soccer-loving kid, or somebody, or like Carlos said, or a kid that maybe doesn't love the game right now, but can maybe get pulled into it by reading the book. Make sure you guys check it out. But let's move on here, Carlos, to our segments here as we wrap up the podcast. We've dropped some names already. We know you're an R9 guy. People watching the podcast can see behind you. We have really nice prints of Maldini, of Totti. There's a Roma pennant there. Let's go to our all-time five-a-side segment. So to remind you, Carlos, and our listeners, you have to pick yourself. So that is a key. You do have to pick yourself here. But then you have four legends around you, right? Any formation you want. Goalkeeper is optional. That is a philosophical choice that you can pick or not, but tell us your all-time five-a-side squad here for the Because Football podcast.
So the first name on my sheet is always going to be Maldini. He's my favorite player. Although I was never a Milan supporter, I just love watching him play. I learned a lot.
So you're not a Milan, not a Rossonero, but love Maldini. Interesting.
Love Maldini. I've come to respect Milan. I think they're always a European powerhouse, but I love watching him play, and I think he's the best defender of all time. So that's the first name on my sheet. And number two is going to be Messi. You have to have Messi on your team. And then I struggled a little bit because I kept thinking, okay, do I put another forward? I think so. Xavi, I think I would have, because I think he would pair up well with Messi.
Yeah.
For
some reason, nobody ever picks Xavi. We've had Iniesta a couple times. Maldini gets chosen. I mean, yesterday I had somebody and they picked Maldini. Messi is always one of those where people are like, he's almost too obvious, so maybe I'll skip him. But yeah, nobody really brings up Xavi, so I'm glad that you gave Xavi Hernandez some respect.
Then I think Yaya Toure. I think he's just a powerhouse of a player and so underrated.
Agreed, man. Such a fun player to watch. There was that one season for Man City where it was like he was just, no one could stop him, man. Nobody could stop him. There's no one to compare him to. There's no other footballer we've had that had his size and strength and was an attacker. Like, the guy would score goals and create goals. You know, typically we associate the big brutes with defenders, right? Or goalkeepers. But like, he was a guy who was going to make things happen and could just dominate whenever he wanted to. So, and then where are you playing? Where are you playing in that team, Carlos?
So I was always a defender, which is why I like Maldini, and now I get to say I played next to Maldini. So
there you go. Cool. So you guys are holding it down. Awesome. Awesome squad.
Well, he is. I'll be there supporting.
Right. That's the good thing about Maldini is, you know, he might not need your help, right? He probably won't. So 100%. You can just hang out, just watch in awe, right? Just watch and learn. Super cool, Carlos. Last one here we're going to wrap up with. We are on the Because Football podcast. Can you complete the sentence, because football, ...
Because football is a transnational language that transcends borders and has the capability of bringing strangers together and make them laugh, smile, or cry.
Dude, Carlos, did you have that prepared, man? Because that's, just so everyone knows, this is always a sneak question. I never prep our guests, but you got it, man. Definitive answer. Beautiful. Thank you.
Beautiful,
and
thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Also, just so everyone knows, Andrew's doing an excellent job of just promoting the growth of the game at different levels. So if you're not following him on LinkedIn or IG, you definitely should do that, man.
Thank you, man.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. It's always the people who work in communications and PR who give a shout out. It shows you're a professional. You know what you're doing, man. Yeah, to echo that, we're very excited. Big year, a lot going on. Doing live streams more, doing a lot of video storytelling, as many of you might know, with our road trip to the World Cup series, the World Cup host cities. And yeah, it's a wonderful time here. But not writing a children's book yet. You might have challenged me. You might have given me another idea, Carlos.
And we're going to collaborate on the next one, right?
Let's do it, man. Thank you so much for being here as well and sharing your story. Again, we have all the links in the description to find out more about the book, to order, to pre-order, and check it out. But if people want to get in touch and chat with you, what's the best way to do that?
So people can follow me on Instagram at cd.mojica. They can also follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at CD_Mojica.
Hopefully get some like-minded people that want to connect here. And yeah, again, Carlos, thank you so much. And everybody listening and watching, thank you guys for being here. We appreciate it. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.